Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Jana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachare Yamuna Tiravanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Pijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Priyati Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Dana Prajajana Ranjan Yashoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana Amuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Damodara Radha, Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe. Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Hmm.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Before you get started, I just wanted to mention that the break fast time today is very short and it occurs during Srimad Bhagavatam class. It is between 7:16 and actually a little past Bhagavatam class 8:09. But somehow you have to break fast between those times. So my suggestion is that you run and grab a few grains of rice or something, and so you can break fast during class. Otherwise, you will not get the benefit of your Ekadashi fasting if you don't fast before the end of the Parna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, dear devotees, so eating during Bhagavatam class is permissible. Just this one time. Just make sure that you turn your mic off while chewing. That's the request. Okay, I just need to get set up here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. So today we'll be speaking about begging, borrowing, and stealing bhakti. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Nashtaprayashu abhadreshu nityam bhakti sevaya bhagavatuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Om. So we're reading from Canto 5, State of Impetus, Chapter 13, titled Ragma and Jatbharat. Text 12. So that's 5, 13, 12. Kvachit kvachit shina danastu tasmin sayasanasthana viharahinaha yachchan parat apratilabdha kama arakya drishtir labate vamanam. Kvachit kvachit shina danastu tasmin sayasanasthana viharahinaha yachchan parat pratilabdha kama arakya drishtir labhate vamanam. Would anyone online like to try to read the verse? Kvachit kvachit, sometimes. China dhanaha, becoming bereft of all riches. Nu, but. Tasmin, in that forest. Shaya, of getting for lying down. Asana, of a sitting place. Thana, of a residential house. Vihara, of enjoyment with a family. Hinaha, being bereft. Yachan, begging. Parat, from others, friends and relatives. Pratilabdhakama, not getting his desires fulfilled. Rakya drishtihi becomes greedy for the wealth of others. Labhate, he obtains. Avamanam, dishonor. Translation. On the forest path of material existence, sometimes a person is without wealth, and due to this does not have a proper home, bed, or sitting place, nor proper family enjoyment. He therefore goes to beg money from others. But when his desires are not fulfilled by begging, he wants to borrow or steal the property of others. Thus, he is insulted in society. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The principles of beg, borrow, or steal are very appropriate in this material world. When one is in want, he begs, borrows, or steals. If begging is unsuccessful, he borrows. If he cannot, he steals. When he is caught, he is insulted. This is the law of material existence. No one can live here very honestly. Therefore, by trickery, cheating, begging, borrowing, or stealing, one tries to satisfy his senses. Thus, no one in this material world is living peacefully. Text again. Kvachit kvachit kshina dhanastutasmin chayasana thana viharahinaha yach chan parad apratilabdha kama parakya drishtir labhate vamanam. Translation. On the forest path of material existence, a person is without wealth, and due to this does not have a proper home, bed, or sitting place, no proper family enjoyment. He therefore goes to beg money from others. But when his desires are not fulfilled by begging, he wants to borrow or steal the property of others. Thus, he is insulted in society. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilit Yena Tasmai Shulove Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shumate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. So the living entity, in trying to enjoy his senses, enters into a situation of deficit. So this is the nature of sense gratification, in that it's a fire that can never be satisfied. So just as the example of pouring ghee into a fire never extinguishes the fire, similarly, there's actually not enough. The person who's stoking the fire actually doesn't have enough fuel. They run out of fuel. So the fire itself keeps burning. So in the same way, uh, lifetime after lifetime, the living entity with the seed of material enjoyment in the subtle body is carried from one body to the next. Even in one lifetime, they're carried, their body changes shape, and that seed of material enjoyment is just burning and burning and burning. So what's happening is that the person is always in a state of deficit. And so Rishabh Jat Bharat is actually explaining to Maharaj Rahugana is that person sometimes is without wealth and due to this does not have a proper home, bed, or sitting place. So even a wealthy person as well, they can be in a state of deficit. So they have wealth, but they may be in a state of deficit for their health. Uh, so the cost of accumulating that wealth came at the cost of different autoimmune diseases due to not eating properly, not sleeping properly. And so as a result, their body is in a state of deficit. Somebody may be very particular in taking care of the body, but they're unable to accumulate enough wealth. In either case, it's based on the senses, pleasing the senses, instead of pleasing the master of the senses, which is Rishikesh, you're always in a state of deficit. if you look at the structures of the economies around the world, the big economies such as the US, China, uh, and if you even are very curious and want to know the history of money, you can find out about how free markets in the world are actually constructed, and they're constructed this, uh, based on debt. So, in other words, a government who's supposed to give shelter to the people, what they do is that then able to raise enough money from collecting taxes because the expenses always exceed um, how much money they're able to raise. So basically, there's like a curve that if you tax people too heavily, then people lose their motivation to actually do business, and so the economy contracts. But if you set the tax sufficient at a certain point, then you're able to collect. But still, you're unable to actually collect enough because as a government, um, the the administrators themselves are proposing different policies. So there's a social policy, there's an educational policy, health policy. So all these different legislations that are being proposed by new officials that come into government, it basically increases the spending. So you come into a government and they had a policy that was running for, like 10 years or so from the previous administration. And then that one has to be maintained. And then a new government enters, a new enters, and to show that they are answering the call of their constituency, they propose new legislation. And so that requires money, right? So then enter the Fed. So I'm going to show you something very cool. So this is called the US clock, the Fed clock. It can load the national debt. It's pretty extraordinary. So this is a website that's called usdebtclock.org, and it's basically been tracking the debt of the national government for a while. I'm just not sure how far back you can see. Yeah, since 1980. So let's go to 1980. Let me share my screen here. Right. So those of you who are online, you can see on the screen. Um, so in 1980, the U.S. national debt, it was 916, what is that? Billion. Yeah, it's 800, 916 billion, 803 million, about. Yeah. So that was the national debt, and it's comprised of, so the debt per citizen, it was 4,222. Um, and then there's large budget items like Social Security, 121 billion. There was defense interest on debt, etc. So then now if we cycle forward to 2023, let's have a look at how much it is. It is now, okay, so this is quite a, right? 116 billion 43 years ago. No, it is 33 trillion 522 billion 209 million and counting. This is pretty extraordinary, right? So remember, a trillion is 1,000 billion. So it's increased by 33,000 times the national debt in 43 years. So in other words, it keeps printing money. So in order to prevent runaway inflation, the Federal Reserve has a monetary policy. So basically, what happens is that they they borrow the printed money to the banks, right, and then they charge interest to the banks. So the bank borrow the money, and then the banks themselves add their interest on it. So if the inflation is 10%, then or like it's 3% or so, they charge interest um, that is lower. Let me just think about this. So essentially, $100 or $100, and at the end of the year, it's worth $5 less. Um, so the government has motivated everybody to like continue to work. So the incentive to work is the idea of accumulating wealth. However, your money is being devalued. So the government has basically incentivized you to basically work for $100 worth, right? So put in $100 worth of labor. But at the end of the day, at the end of the year, that $100 that was going to get you $100 worth of items at the beginning of the year only gets you $95 worth of items. So in this way, that's basically basically a rough summary. It's not a good explanation, but you can get the idea. um, that they basically have taken, the government has taken $5 from you, right? And so that's a debt-based economy. We look at how governments are able to successfully raise money for various wars. It started in Italy. So there's one professor of economics sits at Stanford by the name of Neil Ferguson. He's got a series on the history of money. It's very fascinating. But you can see the whole idea of um, of a debt-based economy is that the Federal Reserve they want to for the government they want to increase their spending, but if you print too much money, then it gets devalued too quickly. So in other words, people begin to like not trade in that money. And so just like if you have what is called a bank run. So a bank it has 1 billion of assets, right? And and then people lose faith in the bank that the $1,000 that I have in the bank, could I get it back? So if people lose faith, they have that doubt, then what they actually do is then they withdraw the money. Now, the amount of money that the bank has, the amount of the promises that they've made to people. So, in other words, if you have 1,000 people with 1,000 um, accounts and they have money, their liabilities to the account holders actually exceeds it exceeds their assets, or it exceeds the amount of liquid cash that they have. So in other words, if all 1,000 account holders lose faith and then they actually withdraw the money, the the bank won't actually be able to do business, because what they've done is that they've taken your money and they've invested it in other financial assets. And so because that money is tied up in other financial assets, they can't fulfill that promise of what's on your bank statement. So if you've got $1,000, they can't fulfill that every single customer. And so basically what a bank run, what ends up happening is that there's too many people now wanting to actually withdraw their money. And so down. This has happened in the last couple of years, bank in Silicon Valley, where people lost faith. So in the same way with the currency is that if the government actually prints too much money, then people want to basically use another currency, and they lose faith in it. And so then it gets devalued very quickly. And so then the government needs to keep printing more because, it's losing value, but they need enough actual currency. So therefore, what is so therefore value that so $100 worth of value of goods. Now you need $200 worth of currency, like paper, buy the same goods. And so in this way, you have a situation of run. So this is what's going on in Kali Yuga, is that persons who are not qualified, they are structuring free market based on debt. So free market is where people can do business, you make a good. So here at Aghari, we produce milk, we produce vegetables, and then we offer those for sale. And the prices controlled by the people who have the most information. So with that, our cost of production, because we produce the actual commodity, the milk in this case, in a specific way, um, our, like we protect the cows for until their natural life, and it's based on a specific set of values that we the cow is revered as mother. So that information basically controls the price. So if we go to a store and say, oh, okay, well, you want to buy our milk, cost of it is $9.30. The 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 store owner won't be interested because they don't see any incentive. How could they charge like $10 for half a gallon in their store? So nobody will buy, right? But we do have customers. There are people who are actually buying. So why is that? It's because of the information. So some of our customers, they're actually to the farm. They've just seen our website and all of that. So the persons with information, in other words, information actually controls prices in free markets. So those with the most information, they are able to that's what sets the price. In centrally planned economies, like for example, uh, like in communist Russia, where the prices were set by the government, it just never. Um, so there's an advantage, to letting prices being controlled by the people who do business. But if it's underpinned by a debt-based economy, then you have this situation. So people use a lot of consumer credit to build up their lives, purchase houses, uh, purchase vehicles, take their kids to school. Um, so the way that people are borrowing, it seems, yes, this is a civil way, as a civilized way. However, if a Kshatriya had to come and just see the situation that in 2020, um, basically, this is how people are living with you have to have a credit to like just live a decent standard of living. Oh, it's abominable. Um, because you basically are unable to accumulate wealth. So you're unable to afford property. Um, you're unable to afford jewelry. If you look at even in households, like the head of house, or at least the center of the house, which is the wife or the mother, you can ask, how many jewels do you have that your husband has bought for you? So, in other words, an asset that's just like stable. So, whether you know, there's this shortage, that shortage, people will always value that commodity. So how many commodities in the household are just like stable? Usually in older economies or Vedic economies, the mother, uh, the husband would purposefully buy jewelry, not just, for out of sentiment and to like cultivate conjugal love. That's there, it has its function, but it's also to basically safeguard um, the wealth. So it's accumulation of wealth of the household. So that was one way of accumulating wealth. Another way was actually purchasing property, because in the property and land itself, um, you have um, you have the soil. In the soil, you can have basically harvests that can exceed generation, right? So now what's being predicted is that there's about 60 harvests left in how people are farming, uh, or at least centralized food production systems, where they plow the land and they use all these like to plow 1,000 acres at a time, and to plant, and then you have to deal with super weeds and all of that. So all these methods are basically have created a finite lifespan. But soil, if you take care of it, where you're not like plowing, but you're just a shallow plow, which is called disking. And then you put in your manure, so you have cows, and the cows, they are digesting the grass. That grass is being produced by you know photosynthesis from the sun. So in other words, the sun is just diffusing an unlimited amount of energy. Then you have cows. Then you have grass, which can just grow anywhere. And then the cows take that as grass. They eat the grass and they digest that and they turn that into manure. So this combination of cows and land basically is an unlimited source of wealth, if you can visualize it. So you basically are able to have unlimited number of harvests from the same land because you have the manure, right? To replenish the nutrients and then replenish the nutrients in the soil. And then all you now need is just seeds. So then if you're growing a crop that is not genetically modified, that is producing seeds, then those seeds, when they enter the soil, um, so you have the cows eats the soil. That combination is a cycle of unlimited wealth because the energy it just keeps going and going and going and going like that. So that's why when a Shatra, if they come in and see what people are doing, that they're not purchasing property, they're living in high-rise buildings, they're paying exorbitant rent, they're unable to actually accumulate wealth in the household in the form of jewelry. Um, and they're using credit scores to, maintain a decent standard of living. Oh, this is quite abominable. Um, you know, the money that they're accumulating in the bank, it's losing value every single year, right? And as we showed on that US debt clock, the government is printing more money just to make it seem like, yes, the US dollar is of the same value, but actually, no, it's not of the same value because they have to print more, but they also take. So it's a very abominable situation, but it's taken to be civilized. And even the Gen Zs are seeing it as well. That we're going to school. We just to complete med school, you walk out of there with a $200,000 debt, and then you're basically just chasing your tail the entire time. So Kala Swarupa was telling us that his friends, he has two friends that stay in New York. Both of them are medical, and all they can afford is a one-room bedroom apartment. So it's not that they're frugal or anything like that. It's just because that's all they can afford. New York City. And if you ask the female doctor, okay, do you have any diamonds? Okay, you have a just one diamond, maybe your wedding band, what your husband gave you. But do you have any more? You're a medical doctor. You should have more. Like if you were invited to the Met Gala, would you be able to, foot the bill? No, there's nothing. And yet I have this big title. I have this nice certificate from a prestigious school. So this is the tragedy in this current society. But in Bhakti, the nice thing about Krishna consciousness is that you never lose. So even if Krishna steals from you, you never lose. So as we know, a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the appearance of Amanadev, and Krishna, he demonstrated that he was the greatest thief because all he asked were 3 paces of land. But the footnote, which Bali Maharaj, um, he was told by his spiritual master, but he and so then the Lord proceeded to ask, okay, for my third step, where am I going to put it? You promised 3, and you've covered everything. So now where am I going to put it? And so Bali Maharaj, being a grandson of Prahlad Maharaj, knew exactly what to do. He surrendered his head. And so he was in a abominable situation in that the Lord actually arrested him like a thief. Why? Because he didn't fulfill his promise. So even though he had surrendered his head, but this was unacceptable. The Brahmin, who was in this case Vamandev, requested 3 paces of land. And so he was arrested. And so everybody was just seeing those Lord Brahma was there just seeing the situation, all his family members, all his military generals. He had become the emperor of the entire universe, uh, Bali Maharaj, and now he was being treated like a common thief. So it was, I don't a degradation of his status. But the Lord just created the situation just to show the superlative character of Bali Maharaj, and that in spite of all this disturbance, he was determined to remain surrendered on the Lord. And so then the Lord, he felt indebted to him, and so he gave him his personal uh, association. So he told Bali that in the planet, so you're Iranian heavenly planets. So now his capital, before he surrendered to the Lord, his capital was Swargaloka. He and his military generals of the Daityas, they had created this coup and they had ousted the demigods. And so that's the most opulent city in the universe, in Swargaloka. So this is the city of Indra. But there was a planet that was following the instructions of the Lord, that I want you to construct this planet, and it should be more opulent than Swargaloka. So that's in Sutta. Just forget which architect. Yeah, it's either Maya. Anyway, it's there in the eighth canto, I think. It's described. The demon Maya or Vish. It's probably not Vishwakarma. It's probably Maya. Anyway, you can find it. So it was more opulent. So it's called the subterranean heavenly planets. And it hadn't been occupied. And so he said that residents, and I'm personally going to, whoever doesn't accept your dominion over this planet, my Sudarshan chakra, my personal weapon, their heads off. So he actually came out better, Bali Maharaj. He got a more opulent capital city and planet. He had the personal association of the Lord. Um, and that whole situation, when you look at it, Bali Maharaj was arrested, his head disheveled and everything. It was a very glorious situation because then his grandfather came, Prahlad Maharaj, uh, and they were asking, pleading the Lord forgive, to just pardon Bali Maharaj. Lord Brahma as well came, and pleaded for Bali Maharaj, So it was just a very opulent situation. Uh, and yes, Bali Maharaj came out better. So I became curious to search online for a story of, I had heard one pastime of one thief trying to steal the jewelry of Krishna. So the thief in Mathura heard about Krishna, that he has all these ornaments, and yet he's only a 5-year-old boy. And so when he heard about this, he was determined and went to Vrindavan to find this boy. So I tried to search for that pastime, but then I found another interesting story. So this is a thief from Odisha returns Lord Krishna's jewels after 9 years with apology note. It says he was having nightmares. So the story was published in May of this year. Uh, so a thief who had stolen Lord Krishna's jewels from the Gopinath temple in Odisha's Gopinath Pur returned them after 9 years, with a note stating that he had been haunted by nightmares ever since he had stolen them. Apparently, the man had recently read Bhagavad Gita and realized the error of his ways. The jewels belonged to the presiding deities, Krishna and Radha, and were worth lakhs. During 2014, from Yagya at Yagyashala, where the ritual of Yagya takes place, this is the man in his note writing. I had taken the ornaments for which I faced a lot of problems during these 9 years, and I surrendered these. The thief, unquote, the thief wished to remain anonymous. He left the bag. He left the bag of ornaments, the stolen headgear, earrings, bracelets, and at the front door of the temple, and mentioned the priest. He also left an additional 300 rupees as a penance along with the ornaments. The unnamed thief mentioned in his apology note. The thief was moved by Lord Krishna's teachings and decided to return the stolen jewels to the temple. He confessed in his note. The return of the stolen jewels was brought joy to the temple authorities and devotees. The thief's act of contrition and his realization of the importance of Lord Krishna's teachings is a testament to the power of Bhagavad Gita. So here's a thief who approached the Lord to try this year in May, where he returned. But in 2014, that's when he actually stole. So even though, yes, he suffered externally from the karmic reaction, but he actually came out better. So this is not a recommended way of awakening your bhakti. Steal Radha Damodar's jewels. I'm certainly not advocating that. But this is what happened to this thief. He came out better. He was sorry, and because of the ghost, because of the karmic reaction pushed him to actually take shelter of Bhagavad Gita. So, in other words, he didn't take shelter of material means. So, the Lord in the heart did him that in relief from these ghosts, take shelter of Bhagavad Gita. And so that's what he did. And so then the Lord, just as he spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, similarly, he spoke to the thief, telling him, okay, now you need to return these jewels. So this is what happens. Krishna is equal to everyone. Uh, this is a important thing to note is that you always come out better, right? So in the construction of farm communities, in trying to assimilate this idea that the wealth is in the land, the wealth is in investing your life to protecting cows, uh, the wealth, your self-interest will be fulfilled by participating fully in the second half of Prabhupada's mission. Um, that's where it is. It's going to take some time, but this is something to think about. So as we were so you always come out better. Sorry, this is the point I'm trying to make. So the nature of today's economy makes it seem like your self-interest is in investing your time and wealth in how to accumulate money. However, if you actually understand how it works, then you'll see, no, actually, I'm not accumulating wealth here that I can pass down from generation to generation. All you're just accumulating is debt. And if you are able to accumulate wealth, then it's going to come, price, either your bhakti or your physical health. But usually you pay it in the form of time, not having enough time to actually cultivate your bhakti. But if you invest your time, your energy, your intelligence, your wealth in the second half of Prabhupada's mission, then you actually come out better. So it may seem like, oh, in the beginning I'm suffering, adapting to trying to milk cows every day, or adapting to try to worship Radha Damodar every day. Um, it may seem like you're suffering. And indeed, the experience of it feels like suffering. However, you come out better. Just as this thief came out, just as this Abali Maharaj, as we mentioned, you always come out better. Um, I wanted to read also the pastime of from Chaitanya Bhagavat, the leader of the, the dacoits who surrendered to Lord Nityananda. He too, him and his band were trying to, they heard about the jewels, bracelets, the wealth on the body of Lord Nityananda. And so they wanted to rob him. And so he too approached the Lord and they suffered, but they came out better. So that's the idea. Uh, Begging, borrowing, it's all about approaching the Lord and may feel like you're suffering, but actually in the end, you come out better. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions, reflections, or contentions?
I'm not meaning to rain on your story parade, but there is a logical hole in it, which is that okay, maybe I'm projecting here. If I were a thief, I would have sold the jewels immediately. How come he had them after 9 years?
Sorry, Prabhu, I didn't get that. My connection just went away. Can you please repeat that?
Yes, I find a logical hole in the story because if I were the thief, I would have sold the jewels right away. How come after 9 years he still had them to return?
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of these are like headline stories. So there is question marks. Um, yeah, it just might have been that he might have wanted it to accumulate in more in more wealth. So when you hold on to something, um, that such deities, these jewels are missing from the deities. Whoever has this, whoever finds them, there'll be this reward. He might have been waiting for that. He had his reasons. Um, just like somebody may find a logical hole in it, in that, he was just haunted by ghosts. Um, you know, and he still held on to, those jewels. That should have been motivation for him to like sell them. So yeah, people do weird things. Some people become Hare Krishnas as well. So the dictations of the super soul, um, yeah, they're a great mystery. Why people make certain decisions. So even coming, to Krishna consciousness, when you look at it, even from a logical viewpoint, like why you stayed in Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees, it's very mystical why that happened. So that would be my answer: is that the pathway from his thieving ways to being a uh, a repentant soul through the lotus feet of the deities that he stole. It was a meandering pathway. I know it's a mysterious one, but in the end, he became that. I don't know, Prabhu, if that's a satisfactory answer.
Uh, I think it will do. I just recommend you don't get your stories from Weekly World News or National Examiner.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to actually read the one from the Chaitanya Bhagavat about the dacoits who surrendered to Lord Nityananda. I should have actually opted for that one because that's more the bona fide one. Um, but I think the principle still remains, even without the story, that you come out better when you approach the Lord. So whether you're in distress, in need of money or wealth, there's various pastimes to illustrate this. So I cited, yeah.
Actually, actually, I have a similar experience when I read a book by Dr. OBL Kapoor called The Saints of Vraj. The stories are very far-fetched of saintly people of the past that lived maybe 100 years ago or 150 years ago, and they have visions and darshans and very far out stories that defy credulity somehow or other. But what I got out of reading the book is a lot of inspiration. So at the end, I didn't care if the stories were true or not. All I care about is that I actually was very inspired by reading the book. So yeah, I accept the story on those terms. That is, illustrate the point and gives a good example of how when you deal with Krishna, you end up better, even if it is unfavorable service, like Ravindra Sarup Prabhu called it Putana Bhakti.
Thank you, Prabhu, for accepting. Yeah, I try to cite the pastime of Vamanadev and Bali Maharaj prior to this, I guess, yeah, story published on the public internet. So if anything should be taken as a bona fide pastime, that one I think is the more powerful one to illustrate this point. But thank you so much, Prabhu. We have a few minutes. Maybe let's end here. They're about to open. Maybe we can also use the time for breaking your fast. Okay, one comment from Mother Rajalila.
Hare Krishna, Aghari Prabhu, Hari Hari. I just wanted to
Hare Krishna,
appreciate
Ma.
you taking I want to appreciate you taking the time to do all that research of the the investment of the government and how everyone gets affected by that.
Yeah.
And also how you kind of help us to understand the investment in bhakti as the second part of Srila Prabhupada's mission. I really appreciate how you brought those 2 points together and gave us such an illumination of the value of farm communities. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ma. Yeah, your appreciation means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Okay, dear devotees, I want to end here. Maybe we can use the remaining few minutes to break your fast. As Thakur Prabhu said, you have until 8:09. If you haven't, and you are trying to be respectful during this Bhagavatam class and not eat during the Bhagavatam class, so those who haven't broken their fast, please do so. And as I said, on Wednesdays, they open on time. Our dear Divyananda Devi, she is the quintessential pujari. And so, yeah, there's no more time to churn more nectar, but please continue to speak about this point on how we come out better when we approach Krishna. And so let's pray to Radha Damodar how participation in the second half of Prabhupada's mission, even though in the beginning it seems like poison in the beginning, that it will be nectar in the end. Happiness in the mode of goodness and beyond. Happiness in the Vishuddha Sattva, and will come out better, feeling more of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's presence in our lives. Hare Krishna. Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gopramanandi.